Baltimore City Council Ways and Means Committee, we're back in session. We're here for City Council Ordinance 22-0235, Ordinance of Estimates for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2023. We're here for Baltimore City Fire Department, BCFD. Chief Ford, before we begin, real quick, how many slides do you have this evening?
I think I have around 15.
15, okay. So what we're going to do, actually I'm going to do introductions first. I'm Eric Costello, councilman from the 11th District, chair of the committee. I'm joined by Councilwoman Odette Ramos, 14th District, Councilwoman Felicia Porter, 10th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Council Vice President Sharon Green Middleton, 6th District member of the committee. Councilman Mark Conway, 4th District. Joining me to my left, Councilman Ryan Dorsey, 3rd District member of the committee. On behalf of Mayor Brandon Scott, we have Natasha Mehew, Nina Themelis, and Sophia G. On behalf of Council President Nick Mosby, we have Matt Stegman and Nate Poole. To my immediate right is Marguerite Curran, staff to the committee. Chief Ford, what we're going to do is as follows. First, we've also been joined by Councilman Robert Stokes, 12th District member of the committee. So first, what we're going to do, once we get started, and not quite yet, I'm going to ask for you to introduce all the members of your team that are here with us this evening. I'm going to ask for first and last name, as well as their position title, and if they're associated with a specific division or unit within fire. Yeah. Folks, when you hear your name called, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. Once we get through that, then we're going to kick it off for your presentation. I'm going to ask for you to keep your presentation in the 20-minute range. And then once we get through that, we're going to take questions from the council. As I mentioned, real quick, as I mentioned before, when you are speaking into the microphone, please make a fist and keep your mouth about this far away, and that's so the people at home can hear us, okay? Inevitably, someone in this room is not going to do that, and I'm going to politely interrupt you. It's fine. It's happened with every single agency. It's going to happen a second, third, and fourth time tonight, and I'm going to politely interrupt you each time and just remind you to speak into the microphone. Everyone understand the format? All right, one last thing, when you're talking in the microphone, feel free to take off your mask if you would like. So with that, Chief Ford, please take it away.
Yes, sir. Chairman, council members, who I have with me is Assistant Chief Chris Case, who's over logistics, community risk reduction, Assistant Chief Dante Stewart, who's over operations, Assistant Chief Roman Clark, who's an executive assistant chief, Deputy Chief Jim Matz, who is the Chief of EMS, Deputy Chief Laura Shiloh, who's over training, Director Lisa Wood, who is over human resources, Deputy Chief Derek Reddy, who is the fire marshal, PIO Blair Adams, Equity Coordinator and Government Liaison Kim Washington, Chief of Staff to the Fire Department Amy Beth Leisure, Director Jim Fisher over Finance, Director Tania Reddick, who's over 911 Emergency Communications. 911. Acting Deputy Chief Charles Grantlin, who is over Logistics. Director Dr. Shante Hart, who's over IT. Acting Deputy Chief Carl Knight, who is over Safety. Captain Kalila Yancey, who is the assistant to the fire, she's the assistant to the fire chief. She's a chief's aide. So did I miss anybody? That was my biggest concern, making sure I didn't miss anyone. Oh, I'm sorry, Chief Chase. Knew I'd miss somebody. Sorry about that, Chief Chase. Chief Chase is a battalion chief. She is over communications. She does dispatch for fire department.
Are we doing this?
I can start into it.
Station? Oh, you can start.
Okay, thank you. The first area is administrative services. Some of the most important area, this is administrative services, the area that actually is the executive management of the fire department, and some of the biggest things that stick out in this area that we should talk about is we are intending on creating a deputy chief position of internal affairs. That's one point. The deputy chief of internal affairs is going to help us in respects to structuring a lot of disciplinary processes and other processes that we're looking at, including workplace violence, and we're going to also include that with a couple battalion chiefs as well. So we're actually going to create an area of internal affairs. Another component we're going to do is we're going to pull together certain components in the department and create an office of communications and community engagement. That's going to be very important because it's going to give us an opportunity to communicate more effectively with the community, talking about everything from emergency services and how we respond, to educate the community, to do public safety engagement, and also to do recruiting. It's historically we've really only had one person in the PIO office, and what I'm doing is adding additional people from outside by bringing together a whole bunch of areas in the department that touched each other anyway. Another thing that sticks out is that overall, we are going to invest money in EMS to expand it. The expansion is going to include an assistant chief position to oversee EMS holistically, a deputy chief position, and that position is going to focus greatly on the new projects that we're putting in place in order to make us effectively do what we do, more effectively do what we do. The next slide is fire suppression and emergency rescue, service number 602. This area is the target number is 12,000. And I want to point that in particular because we didn't reach the number 12,000 for the home safety inspections, but what set us off on that is at the high point of COVID and some of the high points in COVID, we held back sending our members out to do some of the safety sweeps, weekly safety sweeps we were doing, and we gradually started turning them back up as COVID subsided and as we learned more about COVID and how to handle it. We also, within that area, we really focused in this area in the fire marshal's office also, we really focused on fire prevention, whereas we did a whole lot of going out, just like Councilwoman Ramos spoke about earlier, of us going door to door, knocking on doors in order to install smoke alarms. So this area, not only is it reactive in respects to fires, it's also, it's proactive about it. This next slide, fire rescue and emergency, fire suppression and emergency rescue. The outline on this slide is the busiest units reported to Firehouse and EMS World magazine. So again, I said these are reporting agencies. In respects to ranking by calls by 1,000, we came number 3 in the country. By ranking of calls specifically for fire, based on the busiest busiest departments in the country, we came up number 4 in the country. And emergency management we spoke about earlier.
I want to ask you a question. You came up number 4. Is that good or bad?
Sir?
Is that good or bad?
What I'm saying is we're the 4th busiest in the country for running actual fire calls. We're the 3rd busiest in the country in respects to running all calls in general. Okay. But as you see, as I'm going to point, we're doing it per 1,000 population because that's the customary practice right now. As I go on, you're going to see where we are on EMS. Now, emergency management has already been covered. Now, in respects to EMS, we are going into next year, and as I spoke to the council previously, we are going to do a significant change to how we do EMS. Within this component, we're going to add, like I said, an additional assistant chief. We're also going to add an additional deputy chief. We're going to add 16 additional personnel that will create 2 full-time basic units. So we're going to have 2 additional basic units running 24 hours in the field. We were able to accomplish this partly because of something that's called ESPP funding. And the ESPP funding is Emergency Service Payment Program. It's something that EMS was able to leverage based upon a new bill that was passed. Consequently, for a partial year, we were able to receive $40 million. The city allowed us to work with that. That's going to give us the capabilities of doing many things, including adding nurse practitioner lines and trying to do public health or mobile integrated health community paramedicine programs. As I stated earlier, it's normal to evaluate our call volumes per 1,000 residents. In EMS, based on some of the larger municipalities and some of the busiest municipalities, we've been ranking #1 as far as being one of the busiest EMS systems in the country. And as I said earlier, we're using $5 million revenue of the ESPP funds to focus on enhancing EMS. That's, like I said, adding the new assistant chief in EMS, the deputy chief, adding 2 new basic units, that's 16 people. We're also going to add quality assurance positions and training staff. We're doing that in order to basically improve the services we have. Quality assurance is going to give us the ability. We only have really 1 quality assurance person, and it's impossible for him to completely keep up with all the data and information that comes by. And we want to proactively be able to improve the standard of care that we do. So we're investing in that area. Also, we're going to invest in the population health programs in order to better connect patients with appropriate care. Now, that's going back to what we talked about, dealing with a mobile integrated health community paramedicine. Our goal is to put people and send people to the right resources and not just ERs. A 911 nurse triage program, that is not a position. Our goal is to actually enter into a contract with organizations that do that. Fire and emergency community outreach. As I spoke about with Blair Adams being our PIO and us trying to create synergy by adding additional resources that do things that basically touch the fringes of what she does, we're going to create an office of community involvement that's going to be community outreach office, and the office is going to be called Community Engagement, Public Education. And that's going to pull in CEASE and some of the other programs and some of the individuals that were involved with CEASE. Yeah, thank you. The OCCE is going to create a extensive program that's going to be an outreach program, as I said, educating communications with our community and create community engagement. Fire code enforcement is 611. This is the area that goes out and evaluates codes and inspects buildings and investigates fires. One of the things that we need to point out on this, the fees increased from $45 to $60 is in respects to some of the special events that we do. Consequently, we expect that the increase of revenues to be around $232,000 per year. Fire investigation is 612. The biggest things we need to point out on fire investigation, it's not uncommon for individuals to investigate buildings and not be able to completely come up with the calls continuously. We're doing very well. We're doing around 57, over 50% historically. That's around the average of the national average. Fire facilities and maintenance is 613. The recommendation budget of that is over $25 million. This area, some of the things that we're very proud of with this area is that we have been cleaning and inspecting over 90% of our gear. The reason why that's important is our gear creates carcinogens rather. And if we keep them clean, keep them repaired, and keep them replaced, it keeps our people more safe. It also has the line, one of the performance measures on that is the percentage of keeping our EMS transport units available, and we're staying above 90%. Now, this slide is going to go back to some of the funds that, okay. This slide is going to discuss some of the funds that we're going to get in respects to the funds based on EMS, the ESPP funds. Our goal is to continuously modernize the fleet, but also our goal is to build 2 fire stations. There's going to be slides further down, I'm sorry. But our goal is to build 2 fire stations and renovate several fire stations. It's actually going to be the last slide. I apologize for that. But we're we're purchasing new vehicles. In fact, we expect by the end of next year that 34 out of our 35 first-line engines will be contemporary, newer engines, and 16 of our 17 frontline trucks will be that as well. Fire communications and 911 call center. 911 answers over 1.4 million calls a year. Fire communications responds and sends out more than 100,000 calls per year. Their output number of fire and EMS units, response dispatched and monitored annually is over 348,000 calls. And the effectiveness percentage number of calls answered from 911 less than 10 seconds has been our goal is above 90%, and they've stayed above 90%. And as far as some of the things that need to be pointed out on fire communication 911, some of the new projects and new issues that have come up, we're moving from CAD to CAD with several different organizations in the city. CAD to CAD means that our CAD will be able to communicate seamlessly with other CAD systems, like the systems like Morgan State, and the ones that we've already completed is Loyola University, Maryland, Notre Dame of Maryland, University of Maryland at Baltimore, and U of B. The ones that are coming on board within the next 30 days is Coppin, Morgan, and Maryland Transit Administration. Training and education. We plan to have 3 to 4 classes over the next year. Also, this is the area that the bill that you all recently passed pertaining to the apprenticeship program. Within that bill, we're going to add 15 apprentices, and we're also going to add an additional position to help guide that, as well as 10 cadet positions. And the last slide, The training academy is working to actually replace 2 trailers out at the training academy in order to put on more than one class. Right now, we're kind of busting out at the seams. And also, the training division has Camp Sparks coming up, and I wanted to highlight that. That's for girls 12 to 16 years old. I think the date on that is July the 31st and July the 30th and 31st. So I think that's the last slide.
Thank you, Chief Ford. Thank you to administration, your staff here, but more important, your firefighters who are out there on the front line, you know, really fighting fires. And I just want to say to the fire department and OEM, y'all run a good ship, and I really mean that. And we know that, and we know sometimes it's tough. I think of y'all sometimes as teachers, because nobody's never happy or satisfied. So just want to share that with you. I'm glad to hear one is you reaching out with Ms. Blair to really do some community outreach. I think that's great, because a lot of times communities don't understand the system, how it works. You usually see them if you put in a smoke detector, but if they can be on, like, we still have Zoom calls with communities, somebody from there to explain to the community how that works. I'm glad to see y'all get new vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Well, well overdue. I wanted to talk about, did y'all apply for any of the ARPA money?
Yes, sir.
You did?
Yes, sir.
How many applications did you?
We actually applied for, I think, around 8.
80?
Yes, sir.
Have you all heard anything back in reference to that?
One has been approved, and it was in conjunction with the health department, where we were getting a centralized storage area specifically focused on COVID supplies.
And 911, that's important. Are your 911 employees, are they cross-trained or you know, receive training all the time?
Well, they receive training all the time, and they receive ongoing training. And also, if there are circumstances where they need some remedial training, they also get that, because they are reviewed by Director Reddick and her team. But the word that cross-trained, they are not, in perspective, they're not cross-trained. They are 911
Okay.
operators. Yeah.
And one more, colleagues. I know I done asked a lot of questions, but they quick questions and quick answers. Y'all said no. Okay. The new employees that you're bringing in,
Yeah.
are they going to be put in some of the fire stations?
The new, right now we have a 40 person, a little bit more than 40 person class going on at training. The new class that we plan on, and we're bringing also EMS and paramedics. That's a fire EMT class. We're also going to bring EMS and paramedic class within the next few weeks. We're hoping after July we can move forward with getting the trailers in place, so we have the elbow room to put on another at least 40-member class of EMT firefighters.
And my last question and statement, I am so glad that the apprenticeship program is still there, because you know our colleagues here, we've been talking about that all the time, and this chair of education, I think that's so important, because a lot of times our young people who don't want to go to college don't get an opportunity to get some kind of career skill, and I'm glad to hear that. I'm really happy about that, but I'd like to kind of be a part of that process, and as chair of education, I'm sure some of my colleagues would also. We would like to.
I want to point out one thing, that we've been purchasing, I want to go back to one of the things you said earlier and then talk about this as well. We've been purchasing apparatuses very aggressively for the last about 7 years, using Amos funding and other funding sources, and create a very aggressive list with general services to move forward with that. That's the reason why we've gotten to, so we've been doing this for a while, but a lot more funds have opened up as well that has really helped us move forward pretty quickly. Chief Case and Chief Granley have done an outstanding job with that. The other component about the high school program or the apprenticeship program is we are very excited about it. We're aggressively moving after it, and the Office OCCE, the Office of Communications, Community Engagement, we literally have put a young lady in that came through our high school program. I think she graduated 4 years ago, and she got in our department around 4 years ago, and she's bilingual. So it's giving us an opportunity to stretch out in certain communities and her be the face of it, so she can teach fire safety, so she can be seen in uniform and she can recruit. So the school program has been very, very advantageous to us.
What particular schools are you doing the apprenticeship?
Well, right now we're still working through Patterson, Dunbar. I think Vivian T does not have the instructor in order, the certified instructor in order to put on the class, but we're working with them. And Patterson, Dunbar, Vivian T, and we basically have lost Frederick Douglass. But what we're doing is, and this is based upon a grant that, application that Chief Shiloh put in for the Maryland apprenticeship program. We believe it's going to give us an opportunity to stretch to all the schools based upon that. So we're literally going to move past the schools now and try to stretch out and move beyond that. And I don't mean these schools, I mean the 4 schools. So we're trying to stretch out beyond those. But we intentionally focused on schools we thought where young people needed options. We deliberately did that.
And this is my last. I'm glad you mentioned about the young lady that's going to be teaching, because we just, along with my colleagues, supported the succession planning bill, and we were talking about those young people that's already working for the fire department. Just watch them, go up the ladder, and I'm glad to hear that. So that's great to hear. So I'm gonna be quiet, and Councilman Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and first I want to thank you, Chief Ford, and especially the department for the work that you guys do in saving people of Baltimore every day, running toward danger, running toward people in distress. I mean, you guys are incredibly important to everything that we represent as a city government. So I appreciate you guys so much. Got a couple questions.
Yes.
And
Councilman, can you get a little closer to the mic?
Yeah, I always have that issue.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll just hold it. Is that better?
Yes, sir.
Great. So what I said was thank you. So my first question is regarding Service 614, Fire Communications and Dispatch. And one of your performance measures, the percentage of calls for service processed and dispatched within 1 minute.
Yes.
Is low as of this year. It's at 77%.
Yes.
Compared to its 90% target, and this is actually one of the lowest in years. And just for reference, that's on page 144 of the budget. And so I was sort of curious, what's going on here? Is this a matter of vacancies, or what do we know about why this has gone down, and what are we doing to get it back up to our target?
So some of the challenges that we've had, some of the challenges that we certainly have within the department have been involving, and I don't mean to throw this out here, has been involving COVID, but it also has been involving staffing as well. So there's been dynamics that have certainly probably slowed that down in the process. But I'd have to really delve into the numbers in order to evaluate exactly all of the turns and challenges that we have. But we do know that has been a challenge, staffing and COVID.
Can we then make that a request, just an update on what we know behind those numbers?
Yes.
I think that'll be helpful in understanding how we go forward.
Yes.
I have another similar question. So on page 131, under emergency medical services, the percentage of patients surviving cardiac arrest has gone down significantly as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if COVID has played a part in that. But can you tell me a little bit about what's going on there? And
there's a couple dynamics there, and Jim, if you want to add into it, you can. But there's a couple dynamics in that area. One of the biggest advantages we had about 5 years ago is we really started aggressively doing public education and teaching people hands-only CPR. And when you don't have people that can at least do that, when our teams get out there, they're kind of behind the 8 ball.
Hi, good evening. First of all, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, thank you for having us. For the record, my name is James Matz. I'm the Deputy Chief of EMS. Unfortunately, a lot of the COVID numbers, they're starting to turn a little bit. It was a COVID effect. It was a COVID effect across the state and the country. What happened was a lot of people were not calling 911. They were waiting too long to call 911. They weren't as avid to go and help people with 911. Like Chief Ford had said, it takes people getting out in front of people to get the citizens and community to do hands-only CPR to be a bridge until we get there. Survival in a cardiac arrest, basically you have about a 10-minute window. We need the public, general public, to step in and be that bridge until we can get there and take them the rest of the way through. We have added some additional equipment like Lucas devices, which are mechanical CPR devices that also do a lot better job for us and our survival rates. So we're hoping to see a better response in the next year.
That's helpful. And if we know, I guess along with the other metrics, if we know anything about the segmented data on that, certain populations that seem to be having more of these issues and why that may be the case. I know Chief Matz, we go into data all the time in our hearings. Yeah, I think that would actually be helpful in understanding, how we might go about addressing it. If it's messaging or if it's preparing folks overdoses, who knows? I think that would be in the data though.
We're actually in the process for the next EMS stat of doing the highest rates of cardiac arrest by neighborhood, because that was one of the problems we had the last time.
Good.
So we can drive it down for topics just like that and be able to target education into those particular areas.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Odette Ramos. Councilwoman Porter, you can go ahead. Because Councilwoman Odette Ramos has some questions from Councilman Burnett also.
Yeah, we both do. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Chief Ford and team. This year we really felt how much we need our firefighters and how much they sacrifice for us. So I want to thank you all for that. I'm just going to leave it at that, otherwise I'm going to get too emotional. My question is related to the work that we've all been doing together since the tragedy of our firefighters. DHCD and yourselves have been working hard to come up with a system where our firefighters, as they approach, we recently learned that the majority of our fires are actually vacant properties, or a good chunk of them. So this is a big issue. You know that you have my commitment, and I think the commitment of all of us to be continuing to work on this issue of vacant and abandoned properties, not just because of the tragedy, but because we've been dealing with this for a really long time. So tell me a little bit more about, and you had talked about it in our briefing. I'm in all the hearings, so we have a lot of hearings on the fire department. But what is the status of that, communication with DHCD and the CAD, that you're going to be getting that information, and the new marking system?
Yes, we have been continuously updating the CAD and putting information in the CAD, and as we stated, that the information that is in the CAD on vacant, derelict, dangerous buildings now shows up on the CAD and blinks in the middle of the screen where people can see it. We're also working with BSIT and working with housing in order to update our CAD with information they may have that we might have. Now, the biggest thing we have to do is we're working with them to clean up the data so it can move over and it's as accurate as possible. Dr. Hart is working on that right now. So we're far along we're very, very far along with that. We also have a Dashi software that is a Baltimore company that is set up to help us navigate instances, overarching issues, the structure of the command structure, who's on the scene, where they are, and things like that. But we also can put information about buildings, including pictures. That's going to give us the capabilities to do that. And Chief Stewart's one of the things I asked Chief Stewart to do is work with housing and figure out ways to mark these structures. We've come up with what we believe is going to be our marking system. Our initial goal was to use numbers as well as just some kind of placard. We couldn't get the numbers to stay in place well enough. But what's probably more important is that the building's actually marked, as many of the buildings we're aware of. So we have red markers actually to put on the building. And in fact, I can show you one, and this is one.
Okay.
And that way it doesn't stand out well. It stands out. It's reflective, but it's not a blight on the community. That was one of the complaints in the past.
Before.
Yeah, and this is going to be on houses. I think you've got the one that's going to be on the buildings, which is much larger.
Good evening, everyone. The larger Assistant Chief Dante Stewart, Operations. The larger placard, similar to that, 2 foot by 2 foot placard, and we're going to use those for vacant buildings. The larger buildings, you'll see them kind of on the west side, southwest side, and just have those same markers, just a larger version of that one. I brought along the older Codex Ray.
That was the old one.
Yeah. So, but the newer one is just like that one, about this size, though.
Yeah. These will be on basically houses, and that size like this will be on large buildings, and they'll be located on the front and on the back of the building. Now, I'm careful about this because there's a lot of things that can happen to this sign. I mean, it could come down. So our goal is to make sure our people are as well versed of their neighborhoods and their districts as possible, but also not count on that being the only thing.
Sure. Right, so having all the information
Yeah.
as they're approaching as well.
And furthermore, be as safe as possible, because we may not know every building and the condition of every building. In fact, we won't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and obviously, if you get a report that somebody's in there, you're going
Right.
in anyway, right? That's what you
Right.
do.
And
But we want to try to at least make it so that you have all the information that you
Right.
you need, and the information is available. We know
Right.
that. So I'm glad that we heard from BSIT the other day that they were working with you on this integration of the various systems.
Yes.
So are those placards going up now?
they haven't started yet. Well, they will be going up in the next few weeks. They will start going up in the next few weeks. We're in the process of getting ready to order them. In fact, we just got to the point where everyone on the committees agreed this is what it needs to look like, and we're moving forward with it.
Yeah, I think.
And we did some tests on it at night as well. But
Right, okay. Well, that's good news. Obviously, we see you a lot in Public Safety Committee, so just keep us posted, and,
Yes.
and obviously, whatever you need on that. I do have one public statement that Councilman Burnett wanted one of us to read, so I will read it. This is regarding the Human Trafficking Collaborative. On behalf of the entire Baltimore City Human Trafficking Collaborative, we want to publicly acknowledge the amazing work of Lieutenant Colleen Lull. Her work in training all Baltimore City EMS and first responders has led to a significant increase in identifying and immediate emergency assistance for human trafficking victims in Baltimore City. We want to thank her for her dedication and thoroughness, which has led to other jurisdictions requesting similar training for various fire and EMS departments nationally. So please pass that along to Lieutenant Colleen Lowe.
And we concur.
Well, it's a big deal, and obviously the councilman has been leading on this issue, and it's a huge issue in our city and nationally. So anytime our first responders are getting the training that you need to, and it may be that many of them kind of sort of thought that might be, and what do you do now? So now you're armed with the right information on what to do. So thanks a lot for being a part of that, and please pass along our thanks.
We will. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'll ask my other question and then pass it along. You had talked a lot about, we had already talked about the 911 and you're going to be working hard to get more Spanish speakers, and you already use Language Line. You have also just talked about a new outreach office. So I guess you had talked about one of your officers that is bilingual that'll be working in that office.
Yes.
And so that's where she's going to be.
That's where she is now.
Okay.
We went ahead and moved those positions around. We moved someone out of the, there's also someone that was in the fire marshal's office that did public education that went out and did public training. Also, we moved Captain Weems into that office who was doing, she leads hands-only CPR and does a lot of community outreach. And the other component, we're going to put a civilian position in there as well. We're abolishing several positions to create part of this, but it's doing other things. And the civilian position is going to do a whole lot of social media for us. And like I said, historically, we've had one person doing most of that,
Right,
if not all of it.
Yeah, I think it's important, and you already recognize it, to have somebody who speaks other languages, particularly
Absolutely.
Spanish at this point.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad that you even started from that point.
Right.
So thank you for that. I guess because I ask the question all the time. That's where you got it from. So thank you. I appreciate that. I'll pass it on for right now.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. Chief Ford, just want to echo my colleagues. You've been very responsive, even on a Sunday, when I have called you and you have picked up and helped me navigate through critical EMS services that were needed in Cherry Hill. So I definitely give kudos to you, sir. This is sometimes a thankless job in leadership, and so just want to thank you for that. I did have two questions, one from Councilman Burnett. Over the past 4 years, 33% of injuries of firefighters have sustained in the line of duty have come from extinguishing fires, and vacant structures totaling approximately $1.5 million paid out in worker compensation claims. Can you talk to us about how the fire department is, how the fire department are mitigating those risks on behalf of workers?
Yeah, and Captain Knight, if you can also find your way to a mic as well. The fire department, we track all injuries that happen on the fire. We're very aggressive about tracking all injuries and trying, I mean, everything from, in fact, if you look and see what our major injury is on the scene, it's exertion. Mm-hmm. We have exertions, trips, falls. Those are our major issues. It's not necessarily a burn or something like that. But we do a whole lot of training, and we try to establish a program to try to encourage people to stay in shape as well. So you want to elaborate on it?
Yes, I'm Acting Deputy Chief Carl Knight, Office of Safety and Risk Management. As Chief Ford said, all of our injuries are tracked. Our biggest percentage of injuries are overexertions, which used to be sprains and strains. Those are those muscular and ligament injuries. We do have some minor burns as well. Those are they're tracked, both vacant as well as non-vacant structures. When they come through, we track them from the injury date until they go back. We work with Cedric, who is our workers' compensation company, and we ensure if there's training needed, then that member is sent back to, along with the fire academy, we send them back for training, any type of retraining.
Thank you so much for that. Another question that I have, the facets report, that's something that, Chief Ford and I, we've talked about on a number of occasions.
Yes.
with regard to the assessment. Do you have an idea when the recommendations from that report are going to be implemented?
In respects to the facets report, there are some we've already started putting in place.
Yeah, so I'm specifically looking for the assessment for firehouse, excuse me, maintenance,
Oh.
maintenance and some of the things we had talked
Right.
about, particularly for Engine 55
Yeah.
over there in Mall Park and down in Westport.
Yes, ma'am. We're in a very, in comparison to where we were last year, we're in a better position in the sense that we have access to the $40 million. The state forwarded $10 million for the building of 2 fire stations, $5 million apiece. We're going to have to add some more money to it. We selected those stations based upon, and I know the question had been raised, we selected those stations based on the condition of the station and the longevity. Those stations have been in poor condition for a while. So we're moving forward with those 2 in particular. But
And which 2 were they?
14, engine 14, and 27 engine, which is on Minnesota.
Okay.
Yeah, but we have other other stations we're looking at as well. But we have somewhere around 6 to 10 stations that we intend on renovating based upon the funds, the ESPP funds that we are going to have access to.
Have you all identified those 6?
The way we're going to identify, we have a list and we have an outline.
Okay.
Not just Facets report. Facets actually also used our outline in order to prepare their documentation. We do have an outline, but I've also put together a group of people inside the department, stakeholders and union people, to evaluate what we're looking at and also make recommendations to us. We have that group together right now, and we're expecting recommendations from them soon.
Okay, and so soon, is that this summer? Is that later this year?
No, it is our goal to have it done, evaluated, and recommendations by midsummer.
Okay.
Because we'd like to move as quickly as possible.
Okay, I would just like to plug one of the engines that I've been talking with some officers about, engine 27, replacing that existing structure as far as like the maintenance there, whether they're going to be moving to a new location, renovating that location. I think they've been waiting. That particular establishment facility has been waiting for a little while since its inception in 1888.
Yeah.
And so,
Okay.
just want to put just want to put a plug out there that, and we've talked about this on a number of occasions, some of these facilities are public health hazards.
Yeah.
And so it's my intent to really kind of double down on ensuring that we get proper facilities in place, whether it be, just renovation. It doesn't have to be a full-fledged firehouse, but
Right.
we need to begin to start asking serious questions about renovating a lot of these firehouses. The showers, look, the showers are not up to date. We have, bedding, asbestos in the walls that our firefighters who are supposed to be, public service that have, like my colleague has said, have just been a tremendous asset to this city over the past year.
Yes. We're also believing that the funds are going to give us an avenue to move forward with a lot of things, because these buildings were built only with men in mind.
Okay. Yes.
So our goal is to as I'm sure Kim Washington's back there smiling right now, we're doing this also through an equity and inclusive lens.
Okay. And then I'll save my other questions, but Council.
I just want to mention, I know we talk about vacant property, and unfortunately some of our firefighters passed away. And none of my colleague, Councilwoman Odette Ramos, and President City Council, y'all passed a bill to increase the fines on vacant property. But back in, I guess, April, I introduced a bill called Blight Elimination Task Force.
Yes.
And the idea was to, Miss Mary lived next door to 3 vacant houses, right? Right now, the house is still gonna be vacant. How do we address that? And we address that by creating the task force. And the task force will be 14 members of the city council get a chance to appoint a community person from their community, because they're the ones that live in the community, they should have a say-so in what they want to see in their community. And the idea was the ex officios or the city administrator and his designee, the director of Department of Planning, designee, the commissioner of Housing Community Development, designee, and then these representatives from the Office of Real Estate, Housing and Community Development, Housing Code Enforcement, Land Use, Urban Design, Department of Planning. I just want to run it past you. Let me just kind of solid waste, health department, and the idea is those 3 ex officios will be part of the voting. But the good part about this task force is there's going to be 14 people from the community, and they're going to have say-so in what they want to change in their community. Because if Ms. Murray lived next door to a vacant house, you got mold, dumping, squatters, roof problems. I mean, it's a lot. Even the liquor board would be involved. So I just wanted to run that past you guys to let y'all know that's what I'm putting together. And I think that's really what we need to be talking about now until we get this vacant housing things under wrap.
Yeah. Councilman, in respects to the building of the stations, one of the things we're being deliberate about the committee we put together because we know the firefighters have to live in those stations, the paramedics and EMTs have to live in those stations. So we've asked for representation from each union, and we have representation from each of the interest groups. We have the Women's and Fire Service, the LGBT organization, the Vulcan Blazers, and the Fire and EMS committee. That was the committee we brought in to try to bring together fire and EMS a little closer. So they're going to sit down and it's going to move pretty quickly because we already, because of facets, we already have a lot of the data, we have a lot of information, so we expect to move pretty quickly.
Thank you, and I just want to say the reason why I wanted the 14 of the members to appoint somebody, because a lot of times community don't feel like they empowered, they don't have no say-so in what going to the community. So those 17 people, the 14 is the ones that are going to be voting, and that's important. This task force is important that the community is the one going to have the say-so and the input from other agencies that have the know-how, but the community going to actually vote what they want to see in the community. So I just wanted to share it with you guys,
Yes.
and the women. But
Mr. Chair, a point of personal privilege.
no, you.
Yeah. So another reason why I'm asking those types of Another reason why I'm asking those types of questions is so that we can begin to have some rough estimates that we can share with the administration for the capital for the capital budget that's coming up for next year. Like, we have to begin to start placing those things in our budget as years move forward. And so I would implore you, if you as you develop those rough estimates, sharing them not only with the council, but also with the administration early, so that we can begin to kind of, the council is able in FY2023 next year, we'll be able to move funds. And so we all, to my knowledge, have fire stations in our districts, if not one or two. And so this will be an opportunity for us to really, really advocate for enhanced facilities.
Yes,
That's wonderful, because we have our CAO here. Mr. Short always got the bag of money, I'm glad he's always here.
CAO money.
Oh, and our budget director. We're glad to have both of y'all here to hear this, and it's been recorded, so we can go back and remind you. Any more questions? Councilwoman Ramos? Councilman Conway, go ahead.
Sure, I've got, I'm just curious for the placards, have we fire tested those, just expecting?
they're paper. They're not going to, they literally are cardboard. They literally are cardboard. They're not metal. The other ones weren't metal.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the reason why when we put them there, we're hoping people become more acclimated with their neighborhoods and know what the firefighters know what their community is, just in case this falls, somebody pulls it down. Even if we put metal up, if somebody pulled it down,
Yep.
we still wouldn't have it. But we're moving forward with it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I noted on page 131 under emergency medical services that the percentage of EMS responses within 9 minutes, it's low and nowhere really near our target. I'm curious, what is the sort of national standard? Given we're seeing that sort of trend in the wrong direction, not terribly in the wrong direction, but still in the wrong direction, what are some of our remedies to begin to address that?
NFPA.
Some of the causes for why it is where it is. I'm guessing apparatus maybe is.
Okay, I can start off, and Jim, you can wrap it up. But generally, an FPA standard is trying to get someone to assist within 6 minutes, EMT or EM paramedic, and we do that. That's the reason why we use the engines and trucks to help support that. And every department who does what we do does it, who has transport capabilities. The challenges that we have within our system is we are a very, very busy system. We've increased our transport units very aggressively over the last 6, 7, 8 years. But the call volume continues to go up as well. And as that happens, there's a ripple effect, meaning that we're running more calls and we don't have the resources to keep up with it. Mm-hmm. And we're taking those calls to the hospital, and the hospital has nowhere to put them. Right. So our people end up waiting at the hospital for them to have beds or move people upstairs or however their system works at the time. And we have calls still out waiting. That's a huge part of our dynamic. That's part of the reason why we're still running. There's a backside. Certainly we're pre-hospital as far as part of the continuum of care, but there are certain things that we're still doing like the 1970s, and we really have to move forward. And that's part of what we're talking about, having the new community, having a community paramedicine, a public health plan in order to move forward with it, having a nurse in triage, mm-hmm. trying to redirect calls to anything other than the emergency room that really is the practical call not to go to the emergency room. And also the last and probably one of the more significant components, if we can reduce the calls that come in 911 in the first place, because very often people call 911 because it's become cultural to call 911. People just call 911 for almost anything, to be honest with you, and it ties up units at that point. Chief.
So I'm curious, with that, thank you, that was a very helpful answer, and it's something we've talked about before, and we've talked about some of those solutions before. How are we addressing the funding of some of those solutions in this budget, if at all?
Yeah, that's part of the ESPP money. We peeled off approximately $5 million in order to add the additional 16 personnel EMT basic positions to stand up the 2 24-hour units.
And ESPP, can you repeat, what is ESPP?
It's a supplemental payment program. I think I've explained before that they just approved in the state of Maryland effective.
That's the reimbursement, the $40 million. Yes,
we get the 50% of the federal share, and that's also it's a legacy that we're going to have every year going forward from this point forward. Just to piggyback on what Chief Ford said, a lot of the different things we're trying. There's no magic bullet. We're including units in this. We're including a nurse in the 911 center to offload the low acuity calls. DC, they made fun of for a long time. DC is really doing a good job right now. We're actually mirroring that nurse in the 911 center where it's an independent group that they shovel or they pass low acuity calls off to, where they have definitive, they have appointments available at freestanding urgent care centers, GI Medical Center, places like that, and they're able to shuttle those appropriate patients there. We have the units on the street. The Population Health Initiative is not going to just do one-off here and there. They're going to be able to address our high utilizers. They'll be able to, tie the people with alternative destination, alternative transport options. We're trying to hit it from a lot of different facets. I hate to use the word facets, but a lot of different strategies to try to reduce a little bit here, a little bit there, and a little bit here. And I think the windfall from ESPP, we're going to see changes in EMS that are in a generation and coming. So hopefully, we're trying to move the needle.
And I think what we're getting ready to do in respects to Baltimore City is a cataclysmic change. I mean, it really is a big turn for what we historically have done. We're looking serious at moving people by Uber or Lyft or something like that, or quite frankly, prioritizing calls. Meaning that if your condition is reasonably minor, you may not get an ambulance for a while or a transport unit for a while, based upon what's out there and the challenges that we have at the time. Hospitals do it, and you have to do that when you have limited resources, and we do have that.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And I asked this in the beginning of the question. I don't know if I don't think we have answered it. What is the sort of national standard? I think we were at 57%. No, wrong number. 56%. But we tend to hover somewhere between 46% and 62%.
NFPA has, I think NFPA has the standard in there, and it's 9 minutes 90% of the time.
Okay, so that's where our target comes from?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilwoman Odette Ramos.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question here from Councilman Burnett. In 2020, the fire department had 321 vehicle collisions, and in 2021, there were 329 vehicle collisions. Both numbers are up significantly from the prior 4-year period. Can you tell us why these numbers have been trending in the wrong direction, and how much money the city is spending when it comes to these vehicle collisions as it relates to injury cost, overtime, et cetera? Obviously, we're getting a lot of new fleet too, so we don't want to mess them up. So can you tell us a little bit about what's happening there with the vehicle collisions?
I'm sorry I didn't hear the last thing where you said we've got a lot of...
new fleet coming, so
yes.
With these vehicle collision, I mean, obviously we have to get somewhere where we need to go fast.
Right.
But we want to know a little, what Councilmember Burnett is saying is, what's going on with so many vehicle collisions?
Some of the challenges is we, as a department, we report everything. So we have something in our system now called Drive Cam, that we have the cameras in our system. So now, and it might have been a time where someone may have something that happens like a little nick or a bump where they might not report it. Now, because we have Drive Cam, we have the videotape of something might have happened, even though it was very, very minor. So we have a record of it. So that's part of it, and absolutely we're running more and more calls. But those are the two dynamics. The reason why we believe it's going up is because now everybody has to report just about everything.
Okay, so it's a reporting issue.
Yeah, well, it's a reporting issue, but if the dynamic, if you look at the overall money that we're spending after we've had, after the balance has been set, in other words, whatever money let's say somebody hits us, and now we have a video, whereas in the past we didn't have a video that showed that somebody actually hit us. We would get money back from the insurance company from that. But after we've been reimbursed and everything's been settled, over the last 4 years or 5 years, we've gone down significantly. Significantly. I mean, from a high of, I think, somewhere over $300,000 to somewhere below 100 now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. But you can get us some more specifics in terms of
Yes, ma'am.
liabilities and stuff? Okay, that would be a request, Marguerite. And who's here from the Council President's office? I see Nina.
Natasha.
Oh, Natasha's here. Oh, okay.
No, Natasha.
Okay. So that was a request from Burnett's office around the spending when it comes to the collisions in terms of injury costs, overtime to backfill positions, maintenance costs, liability, I'm sure, is in there as well. And then for me, this is a reminder or a question for Director Seneme. I remember when we were talking about the revenues, you had been super clear that we had a significant increase in revenues this year. And so some of it was to sort of backfill some budget, but then we also had the budget folks and the mayor's office decided to put a lot of that extra into our fire and police. And so is the 6 to 10 stations plus engine 14 and 27. Those renovations are coming from that pot of money, correct?
Yes, that's right. So with our entry into this payment program, so we have recurring revenue going forward, but we're actually going to get our first payment this year, which was not budgeted for in '22. So we decided to take that first payment and put it into the capital budget in '23. So yes, that's the money that's going towards the facilities.
Great,
the public
yeah,
se-
so then we have, so we'll get 12 here done. I know engine 31 is getting done because Delegate McIntosh got us money to do that. So that fire station will be renovated. And then you're going to slowly get through to the rest. So we'll get that capital list for the following year. So that's cool. Just as an aside, going back to the vacant property issue, Chief Ford and your team, we have been working diligently with the mayor's office and the city administrator on new systems to be able to get properties out the door, away from private owners that are not paying attention to the properties and into the hands of the city to then make available for redevelopment. There's some game-changing stuff that we're doing significantly, finally, with the help of the courts as well. So just, we're there, we're doing it. We've got all the tools that we're trying to get together as well, and I think it'll be great. So it will just take time and a lot of money. So I'll just keep harping on the money part as well. The other question that I had was, and also Councilman Burnett had.
Real quick, Councilman, is these your last questions?
Burnett has a bunch of questions.
I know, but I'm not pushing it out. But I think these people in here want to go home at some time of the day.
No, for sure. I mean, we've all had a very busy...
Okay, well, go ahead. I just wanted to...
No, I appreciate that. I'll certainly triage the questions. So we've both had the same question around how the recruiting efforts, both for... I know we've talked a lot about recruiting efforts to try to get more EMS and firefighters, but also specifically for bilingual and other languages. So can you tell us a little bit more about your recruitment events, all of the efforts that you're doing around recruitment, and then specifically also for bilingual?
Lisa, could you start into it?
Okay. Good evening. So right now, recruiting, most of the recruitment events are done through social media right now. So that's typically done through the PIO office. So we're pushing that out a lot. Most recently, it has been for the EMT and paramedic positions. So for the bilingual aspect of it, that's been more, that has to work through DHR. We're going to have to change the job posting and make that a preferred like a preferred qualification or reference. So that's going to be the next change because the paramedic and EMT posting has been open and continuous recently.
Sure.
So once we close it and reopen it again, we'll make that change to have the bilingual piece in it. And so we'll do recruitment through social media, through the community engagement, et cetera, make sure that we have people on the ground recruiting for the bilingual piece. Our recruitment effort, again, once we start again for EMT firefighter, will be based on what we did prior, going out, doing job fairs and having at the fire stations, having our recruitment committee out and about, meeting with the city residents, trying to target them for sure. So all of that will be based on that plan as well.
And then also for the 911 dispatch too.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That again, we're currently in the process of hiring again for 911, so that would be the same issue. We would have to revise that job spec to specifically ask for bilingual as a qualification or preferred qualification, and then do the same thing, recruit specifically, most likely in churches and community organizations to really reach out and specifically target that.
Yeah, I think we had talked also about with Chief Ford, you know, specific, you just mentioned specific events, not just social media as
Yes,
well.
specifically, you know, really going out in person
Yeah.
and speaking to the community members.
We currently go out to community events and recruitments now. Case in point, Councilman Burnett has had a couple events, and we've sent people out for that.
Right.
The health fair that was at the convention center, we had people recruiting there, including bilingual people. And certainly when we're hiring for fire EMS, then we really pull our shoulders on it and we do a strong push forward, because we have a committee that we have together that is certainly representative of the community. It really is. And we literally send them out to the streets, not just going to events, but literally going to the streets, going door to door if they have to try to encourage people to apply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've been pushing out the descriptions and everything through our social media. I know all of my colleagues have been doing that as well. You're gonna cut me off.
Go ahead. I just want to wrap it up, but go ahead.
Okay, sure. Let me just ask one more question on behalf of Councilman Burnett. Do you have more questions? No, you're good. Okay. When it comes to the organizational structure of the fire department, how many bureaus is the agency separated into? I think you kind of enumerated that when you were introducing all of your chiefs, but if you can give us that, that would be great. And what are those bureaus and who fills those positions?
Okay. Currently, overall, we have an operations chief. I'm speaking in very broad terms. So we have operations that includes currently fire EMS, but I'm going to break EMS out. And so you'll end up with ultimately where we're going is a chief that's over fire and the normal operation procedures of that. And that individual, he or she is going to deal with EMS as well, because the people on the suppression units are also trained to do EMS. I'm going to have an assistant chief who focuses on EMS itself. And that's the component where all the new projects we're talking about, including the more traditional things as well. I have an area that focuses on safety member services. That's the one that focuses, that the overview is finance, personnel, training, all the people things. The last broad area is logistics and community risk reduction. In that area, you have everything from 911, communications, IT, fire marshal's office, and the buildings and the stations, logistics and the apparatuses, the logistics of it. And in broad sense, that's where everything is.
Right. So, okay, and that you're moving in that direction to get
Yes.
those four now.
Yes.
Article 4, Section 6 of the Baltimore City Charter says, and the city administrator and all heads of departments and bureaus shall be residents and registered voters of Baltimore City at the time of their appointment. So out of these chiefs that you're putting together here, that you've identified, how many of them are city residents?
One of them is a city resident, but those individuals, I have an executive assistant chief who reports to me, and he is a city resident, and they report through to him.
Okay, so so your deputy basically is a city resident, and they
Yes.
report to him?
Well, my second is a city resident,
Uh-huh.
and then, the other ranks, one of them is in the city and the other ones are not.
So the number two, your number two qualifies under this, and then
Yes.
everybody answers
Yes.
to that. Okay. Between salaries, benefits, and take-home vehicle expenses, how much are we spending on those positions that are supposed to be occupied by city residents?
Okay,
That sounds like it's a request, because you may not have
I'll
all
get
of
that to
with
you. Okay, I'll get that to you.
Okay, so the request is for the bureau heads, salaries, benefits, and take-home vehicle expenses, how much are we spending on these positions that are supposed to be occupied by city residents?
Okay, I'm going to have to get clarity to that question, because the statement saying supposed to be city residents, all the individuals that are supposed to be city residents are. Is that what, I don't
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're saying, is that the ones that are,
Okay.
in the seats that are supposed to be city residents, how much are these?
Okay, yes, ma'am.
associated with?
Okay, I
Yes.
got you.
Yes, and we'll get that to you. Nina and Natasha's also here as well.
Nina says she hear you.
Did you get?
Yeah, she
You're
guys.
good? Okay, all right. Let's see here.
Is this your last question, Councilwoman?
I mean, there's
You keep adding on.
there's a lot here, you know,
Okay.
Councilman Burnett has been working on this issue for a while, so, and he's obviously not here because.
Oh,
he's-
well, he can always, that can be a request that you can
Yeah,
send over
we
to them.
have these questions written out. There's a couple more, but we can make sure that those are given to you and make sure that those are taken care of.
Are you finished, Councilwoman? Thank you. First, I want to thank my colleagues for those hard questions, those questions that we've been asking, not just to this, the fire department, but other agencies here in the city. I want to thank the Chief Ford, your administration, for moving this ship. I want to thank the firefighters and the paramedics because they're the ones on the front line. Also, I want to thank Blair and Chief Clark and Ms. Washington. Sometimes when you putting out information, you got to make sure it's correct, and y'all do a good job of doing that. So have a good evening.
You have to say we're in
We are recessed until Monday morning.